So they did a kangaroo court. Really, I know this is a pretty tired phrase, but it was mockery of justice. They condemned Jesus to die, but they didn't have the power to put him to death. Judas, the betrayer, went back to them and said, here's the money back. I've betrayed innocent blood. And of course they said, well, it's not really our problem. So he threw the money in to the temple, and he went out and hung himself. And then in verse 6 of Matthew 27, the chief priest picked up the coins and said, is it against the law to put this into the treasury since it's blood money? Yeah, it's blood money. And you acknowledge that. There's so many inconsistencies in the way the scribes and Pharisees and teachers of the law conducted themselves, thought, acted. Verse 7, so they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. What a benevolent gesture. Foreigners who die, we don't know where they're from. We don't know how to get it. We can't get their bodies back wherever they came from. So let's buy this field and we'll bury them there. Well, it happened to be a potter's field. Verse 7, so they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That's why it's been called the field of blood to this day. Some versions don't translate field of blood. They call it Alchemeda. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field as the Lord commanded me. Do you think that the scribes and the Pharisees and the teachers of the law understood that they were fulfilling prophecy with this? I don't think so. I'm certain of this, though. They had read that prophecy. They'd probably done discourses on that prophecy. But I'm pretty sure they didn't think it applied to them. Verse 11, meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, are you the king of the Jews? You have said so, Jesus replied. That's a phrase that he used more than once when people asked him, are you the son of God? Are you the king of the Jews? You have said so. Verse 12, when he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Just like when he was before Caiaphas, or Caiaphas, depending on how you want to pronounce it, the chief priest. He didn't say anything. Didn't offer a defense. This is so unlike me. When I think somebody's saying something or even thinking something in an accusatory way toward me, I got something to say. Jesus didn't. Then in verse 13, then Pilate asked him, don't you hear the testimony they're bringing against you? But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Well, yeah. See, one of the things about the governor, about Pilate here, is not only was he a governor, but he was actually a judge. And his decisions could be made as final. They could be appealed, but it was up to him. And how many cases had he heard where the accused vehemently would have defended themselves, they would have had many words to say about their accusers and about the accusations. Jesus had none of them, and that amazed Pilate. Of course it did. Verse 15. Now it was a governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. A weird custom. I hope we don't come to that. Oh, I think we may already have come to that in some cases in America, but you might think that's a political statement. I'm not making a political statement. I'm just saying I have observed this. So when the crowd had gathered, back to verse 16. At that time, they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas. Well, it just is ironic. You got two Jesuses here. And oh, by the way, Jesus was not an extraordinary name. It was a derivative of the Hebrew name Joshua. Boys all over the place were named Joshua, and boys all over the place were named Jesus. It's a lot like Jesus in the Hispanic community. Well, verse 17, so when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, which one do you want me to release to you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah? For he knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to him. You know, Pilate was no dummy. First of all, he wouldn't have become the governor in Jerusalem if he wasn't bright politically. And I think he was more than just politically savvy. He understood people, I think, pretty darn well. He understood that the Pharisees and the teachers of the law had drugged Jesus up to him purely out of self-interest. Oh man, that term, self-interest. Whew. It kind of smacks me right in the jaw. I might call it survival instinct. I might call it doing what I think is right. I mean, I can dress it up in a whole bunch of different ways. I can paint it with lots of different colors and nuance. Bottom line is, a lot of my life is done out of self-interest. Now, you can make a case that we've got to have some interest in ourselves, don't we? Yeah, but that's not what's going on here. This is not merely the, urge to survive. It's not just the instinct. We're talking about these guys. Or are they trying to, what was their interest? Their power. Now, some of them would have said, no, it's not about my power. It's about the dignity of God. I don't know how you say it in Greek, but you know what I'm thinking. It has to do with what bulls do after a full stomach. Verse 19, while Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message. Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him. Now remember what time of day this is? It's very early in the morning. Pilate's wife she dreamed about Jesus, and they weren't happy, unicorns and rainbows type dreams. They were bad dreams. She'd suffered a great deal in a dream about Jesus. Verse 20, but the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and have Jesus executed. Wow. How did they persuade the crowd? It could be partially the mob effect, right? Where, it's like momentum rolls and people say yes to things that they wouldn't normally say yes to. I don't know. Well, here's the other part. I think they handpicked this crowd. I don't think these were random people from Jerusalem just dropping by Pilate to see what's happening. No, these were their people. It didn't take much to convince their people. Verse 21, which of the two do you want me to release to you? Asked the governor. Barabbas, they answered. What shall I do then with Jesus, who is called the Messiah? Pilate asked. They all answered, crucify him. I believe this is what they'd been prompted to say. Verse 23, why? What crime has he committed? Asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, crucify him. I don't let Pilate completely off the hook here. But I do see this and realize Pilate was making pretty solid effort to set Jesus free. I mean, he saw that the charges were trumped up and that it was all about the pride and self-interest of the Pharisees and scribes and teachers of the law. He saw what was going on. He offered to substitute Jesus, to release Jesus in substitution of Jesus Barabbas. I mean, he offered a legitimate alternative. Problem was, people weren't thinking with their rational brain here. Verse 24, when Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, watch what he did. He took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. I am innocent of this man's blood, he said. It's your responsibility. In other words, I'm not going to take responsibility for the murder you're going to commit. I'm only going to permit it. Sorry, Pilate, this is where I kind of draw the line. No, that didn't absolve you. In a sense, it was your responsibility too. I think about my own life sometimes, not that I'm very much like Pilate. I don't have any authority anywhere. Even the cat that lives with us has a certain definite amount of authority over me. So I, not like that, but I do think there are times when I want to absolve myself of responsibility when I probably, not even probably, a lot of times I do have responsibility. I want to make myself unresponsible, but you can't do that. Speaking of cats, here's my daughter's cat. Do you ever do that? You kind of want to absolve yourself of responsibility from things, and you think since you've said it, then you're absolved. That's not really how it works, is it? Here, let me just show you the kitten. This is Lulu. She's a German cat. She meows in German. Listen to what the people said. All the people answered, his blood is on us and on our children. Holy cow. We'll take responsibility, and even our kids. Well, the blood is on us. What? I'll say it again. These are not rationally thinking people. They were from the top down. It was a trickle-down effect. From the top, it was all about hatred and threat and anger and violence. Wow. Time's up. I'll try it again next time on SoulCare with Stevie Boy.